Hey, it's a new world, gotta adapt to it. Innovation, information, more than the average. Rushing, please ignore the interruptions. Cause this is digital discussions.
All right, guys, so what's up? And welcome to another edition of Digital Discussions. It's been a minute since we've actually used this format, since Brittany and I have been out in the streets again with everything kind of loosening up here in New York. But this week, I wanted to actually jump on here and have a discussion with Charlotte Manley from Kimco Realty and talk about what's going on in her world and what's going on in general across Florida, obviously, in the market that Charlotte manages for Kimco Realty. And in addition to that, just kind of talk about what's going on with the evolution of retail, COVID, the impact, and other things like that. So Charlotte, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so before we jump in, for the people who don't know you, can you tell us a little backstory on how you got into real estate?
Okay, so I actually started in real estate about, it's been almost 17 years now.
Okay.
I worked with a local private developer here in Orlando. He had properties throughout Florida. They were all shadow anchors to super Walmarts. And then he had 3 in Colorado because he liked to go ski. So I got to go to Colorado. So it was great. And I actually started in real estate pretty much right out of high school. So I was completely green. I worked with him for about 4 years and went over to Kimco, which was an entirely new world, going from a small boutique private development firm to Kimco, this large REIT. And I've been with Kimco ever since.
Wow. So you're at Kimco a long time. They're based in my backyard. So we know the folks at Kimco very well. And I've been in the corporate office on Long Island, where I'm based as we speak. Been there many times, and I actually happened to just randomly bump into Josh Winekrantz last week.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Josh and I go way back. We actually started a nonprofit back in 2007 called the Retail Network together.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So the things we learn when we have these conversations.
Exactly.
So tell us what you focus on primarily at Kimco.
So I'm a director of real estate, which means I handle all of the leasing for a portfolio that is a little over 3 million square feet.
Excellent.
So anything from renewals, new deals, assignments, you name it. The way we sort of operate, I would say in a lot of ways, we're asset managers that negotiate deals.
Sure. So let's kind of dive in with that. So you're the majority of the properties that you're overseeing are in the Orlando market, the greater Orlando market?
I have 5 in the Orlando market, so I'm anywhere. I go as far north right now as Pensacola, and then I go down into Tampa, St. Pete area. They realign us though every few years, which is fun because it brings new eyes to the site. So, I mean, I've had sites in Charleston and Savannah, and yeah, it's great. It's fun. It keeps you on your toes.
That's great. So, all right. So you've been in the business almost as long as me, very similar amount of time. And what would you say the biggest difference is today with what you're doing versus what you were doing, let's call it 17 years ago when you just got into the industry? What are the biggest changes, even pre-pandemic? What would you say has changed the most as far as types of tenants that, have been trendy, or, what categories have been active? Just give me some of like the interesting things that you've seen evolve over the years that you've been doing this.
All right. Well, I would say I have to start off, I guess, by saying I'm thrilled to the point of where we are at now. And I actually think all of this is going to end up being somewhat of a good thing for real estate. And it sort of forces this reset that we needed to have with, the U.S. is over retailed. I mean, there's so many different things that have sort of led us to where we are, not just COVID. Obviously, in the last few years, there's been a hyper focus on fitness uses and this the cool food halls, the cooler, hip type clients that millennials and other people more experience oriented retailers or concepts, which is nice, I think, right? What I like that it offers is the fact that it makes every market somewhat unique. And that's probably one of the biggest differences is when I first started, everything was just cookie cutter. And that was sort of the model that everybody ran on. And that drives me crazy. I mean, when you think about some of the best places to visit, when you go with your family, where is it? It's not to cookie cutter. You don't want to go see something that you can just walk out your front yard and go see, right? Absolutely. You want it to be different and unique to that area. So it's nice that there was this shift, it seems like, right, over the last handful of years to that. And I just sort of hope that everything that's going on right now sort of takes that and it just skyrockets.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think that, each project needs to have its own differentiation points, right? Where you're not going from one project to the next in every state and seeing the same lineup of tenants, which I think even more recently, a lot of projects do still have the same kind of feel and flow. And I think that, one of the positive things to your point is, big landlords like Kimco are going to definitely pay attention to getting those stronger, local, regional concepts that are going to add some interesting point of differentiation into the project and whatnot. Because to go from one, I don't want to knock any tenants, but one generic chain to the next, I think that the world does not need more of that. And I think it makes our jobs, by the way, more challenging, right? Because you put a sign on the window of a shopping center and you send e-blasts and you do all of the traditional things that leasing folks do, whether they're in-house leasing people or brokers. You're not hitting those exciting emerging concepts or those local regional brands. So how do you find creative ways to get in touch with those types of businesses?
I mean, social media is, I feel like
I hoped you would say that. I didn't know, but
it really is one of the easiest ways. It is going on social media platforms and seeing it. And, I try to just, when I am thinking about new prospects for a space, regardless of the market, I try to put myself in the role of the user or the consumer, right? And I'm like, okay, well, if I lived in Jacksonville and I lived in this market, what's missing and what would I want, where would I want to go spend my time? And what would be something unique and an add, right, to this area? And so I think it's something important that a lot of people don't do, I would say, kind of going back to your first question of like where the industry was to where we've grown for now, to where we are now, right? I think a lot of people just sort of go through the motions. So using social media to sort of leverage that market data and find out who are the people making moves, who are people excited to post like, oh, look, I'm here.
Right. Yeah, I mean, listen, I obviously completely agree with you based on
right.
My use of social media and where I see the industry going as a whole, and advocating for people to use social media more in business. But why do so few people actually understand the power and influence of social media in business? Or why are they let's talk about social media for a second. Why are people so hesitant to actually use it as a platform to generate leads or create community or whatever it is? I still think that our industry is so opposed to technology and social media as a whole. I think it's coming around, but it's taking a long time, and we're very behind other industries from that standpoint. Why do you think that is? Like, what's your take on it?
I think it's a couple of things. I think some of it is most of these platforms, right, came out and it was assumed sort of personal use. Over time, it evolved to where businesses started using them, advertisers started, you know, posting on there and really starting to capitalize on that from that standpoint on a marketing side. So I think there's sort of this pre-baked preconception in people's minds, right? That it's for personal. So, oh no, we can't do any blending of the lines. You don't do that. That's against the rules. And then I think there's, as much as this drives me bananas, there's just that, you know, a lot of people are of the mindset, well, is it really broken? Do we need to fix it? They don't like change. Change makes them uncomfortable. This is something that's unknown, right?
Totally.
And so they shy away from it. They're like, well, no, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's, you know, that's going to be a very interesting thing to watch moving forward, because I think that, you know, COVID came in and fast forwarded everything that was going on in our world by 5 to 7 years, right? So I already knew how important using video and social media and things of that nature were. You know, 4 or 5 years ago, I started to really use it heavily in my business and at Sabre. And I could tell anybody a million reasons why it's effective and what it's done for us. Doesn't mean they're going to actually go and do it. But I find it very strange that in this climate, when we know a lot of the old ways are not going to work moving forward, you know, people and companies are still not, you know, necessarily realizing that, again, it's almost something that is absolutely necessary to use and figure out, no less, right? You know, just kind of learn more about and understand how to apply it. And once you do, I think you'll see results, you know, pretty quickly. And everybody, obviously, we're in the CRE digital army together, which is how we came together and how we know each other, which is, again, an amazing thing where, you know, we're coming together as a community and kind of sharing best practices and helping others, you know, understand how to use these tools and get involved. And, you know, I think that's been one of the most positive things that for me has come out of the pandemic.
Yes, I would have to agree. And I think one of the things which the CRE Digital Army does like such a great job at this, but we all though need to do a better job, I think, at communicating the data points that are really behind this social media influence, right? And I think that's something that we didn't have a few years ago, or at least there wasn't as much popular outside of our industry, but just, you know, buy in, where now it all industries aside, right? You can Google and there's plenty of information out there to back up and support what we're saying is that, you know, social media is important, and hey, here's all these data points. I'm reaching your customer base. I'm this, I'm that. I mean, I think the brokerage model ultimately is going to change off of social media. I mean, there's an expectation, I know. So we work with brokers. I have third-party brokers on pretty much all of my sites, right? And I watch their social media use, and I've recently added it to the reporting that I get from them.
Wow.
I want to know.
Yeah.
You know, I want to know what you posted, and I want to know what that engagement rate was, and I want that information. And I think, you know, if we can all continue to sort of work together and share ideas and share information, we can sort of, I think we're going to need to package it up pretty, you know, for a lot of people. But I think if we do it and put a little bow on it, we can say, hey, here's why it works. Oh, and guess what? We've been doing it. So
yeah,
you want to work with us.
By the way, like, that's amazing that I wasn't aware of that. And I haven't really heard that from I don't think anybody before you just said it, that they're really paying attention to what their brokers are doing and how they're using social media to help find the right tenants for your projects, right? So that's awesome. I mean, is Kimco as a whole aware of that and trying to push other people in your position to do that, or is that a Charlotte thing currently?
Well, so on the reporting is a Charlotte thing. Sorry, brokers. But as a whole, though, no, we have since COVID, we have an all-employee call every 2 weeks. And just a few calls ago, it was actually brought up. Our marketing department did a little segment on the different initiatives that they're working on, and has encouraged all of our leasing directors to reach out and to start making use of social media for a business purpose.
So what platforms are they focused on? What are they?
I would say Instagram and Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Right now, I have the impression they're sort of trusting us to some degree with it, right? Do what's most comfortable for you and what platform you're most comfortable on.
Yeah.
I seem to prefer personally Instagram. LinkedIn, I'm trying to get better at posting on. It's just a little uptight. That's what I kind of like about the Instagram.
Yeah.
And then I haven't gone there yet with Facebook, but I've heard and seen, witnessed reading on threads where people will post in a community forum sourcing like, hey, there's an opportunity at this site. You guys live in the neighborhood. What are you looking for? And the feedback that people will get in these, it blows your mind. I can tell you, they're getting more feedback off that than they are the email blast with the 3% click rate.
Yeah, that's really also interesting to point out because, for somebody like myself who's been basically, building a digital marketing company, not I was going to say like within Sabre, but at the same time, I'm a partner in a digital marketing company. So, I started before commercial real estate 20 years ago. I worked in online advertising. So I'm actually taking what I used to do and applying it into commercial real estate. And now, over the last 4 years, I would always, when somebody would say, well, Jay, what do you do exactly? And I'd say, well, I own a company called Sabre. And basically we live at the intersection of commercial real estate and digital media. 4 years ago, that would like blow people's minds. They don't even know what the hell I said, right? It'd be like, okay, makes no sense. Let's keep going. Today, those same people, I think, are starting to really understand what that is. And when you're talking about having conversations about social media with a company like Kimco, that excites me so much because, I've been doing this for so long now where when I'd have those conversations 4 years ago, not only did people not have interest in discussing it further, they thought I was crazy. They thought I was like, why, like, you're in real estate. Why do you have a vlog? Or why, are you doing these things that are definitely non-traditional from a marketing standpoint? And now it's nice to really see that, there's that it's becoming more commonplace and, we're not so crazy. We actually just might be onto something. So I love that. But, let me ask you a question about what you've done maybe personally with brands that you actually like and shop and lifestyle, stuff that you're genuinely interested in and ultimately would love to bring to a project that you're working on. Have you reached out to companies through Instagram, DMing, or have you, are you doing?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Has that been effective for you?
It has, absolutely. I have found that I actually get a response when I shoot the business a DM through social media, on Instagram versus trying to, just show up and catch the owner or cold call the owner. It's, you never, half the time you don't catch them, right? No. And then if you do, they're too busy. But it's funny because they all seem, even if they're not interested at the moment, they all seem to show you the respect of a response, which we were getting away from on the email side. I feel like emails have they're the facts.
Yeah, absolutely. We get how many emails a minute? It's like, I just literally like scroll, control, like just delete, like the majority of the emails that I get at this point. And I think a secret for a lot of us who have been using social media for a long time is that, you're getting to a decision maker. They're
right.
Typically the ones that are actually handling the Facebook page or handling the Instagram page, especially for smaller concepts, right? So yeah, it's been tremendously effective for us. And, it's interesting to see you having the same success.
The other thing I like about it too is, let's say I don't have a need right now. for, at a certain site. But I think, I know, in 2 years, something's coming up, and I really love this concept. The way I look at social media, and especially Instagram, is it allows me to start to build that relationship with that business, right? So when I do eventually go to make that ask, they're going to see that I'm a customer. So I understand their business better than just some, Joe Schmo walking in like, oh, here's a sign, oh, ice cream, need ice cream at the center, and walking in, they're going to see like, oh, you know what? She's here every week. Like, she gets it. She gets us.
Yeah.
So I think that will, I'm hoping, but I really think that that's going to end up playing off.
Listen, it absolutely does. I mean, that's really where we've found our sweet spot, right? Like, we're ultimately, Sabre wants to work with like-minded companies that have similar core values and a mission statement and things of that nature. And I think, to your point earlier, like talking about whether the third-party brokers that you're engaging with and that you're choosing to hire to work directly with, what's their social media look like? Are they using it well? Do they really truly understand how to use these platforms in an effective way? It's really, really, it's like a breath of fresh air to hear that from somebody in your position, because again, over the last 4 years, I've been pivoting my company entirely because I realized that the role of a traditional commercial real estate broker, is going to change. It has changed drastically. And the reality is, if you're not adding value as an advisor to a company or a person, and you're just, I always say, chucking space, right? If you just have, spaces with signs in the window and you're just trying to put anybody in there to earn a fee, by the way, which is like a very common thing in the brokerage side of the business.
Don't even get me started.
Exactly. And it gives a lot of us a bad name, because, we don't want to be that. If we're not adding value, we don't want to even be compensated. Like, we don't want to be working on the project. We don't want it's, I think the requirements to do what we do have already changed drastically, but the role of social media and the role of an advisor are going to become so important, because tenants and landlords are going to have access to so much data through technology, right? That, like, what am I here for?
Right.
What exactly value can I add and bring to the table that, the landlord can't necessarily do on their own, or the tenant can't necessarily do on their own. And I think that's really where we're going. And I think on top of that, when you take the new world that we're living in and the impact of COVID, it's even more so that much more important. And I think it's our job as folks that are in the industry as long as we are to really help educate and pull up the younger people and help and educate the older people who don't think it's that important, because those are the ones who are going to get hurt the most, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, the older folks who have been doing it a certain way forever and are not willing to change, and the younger folks who don't necessarily have a track record and a credibility and client roster or whatever it is, they may not be able to make it out of this kind of COVID cloud. And which is why, again, I was inspired to kind of create that digital army family, so we could all kind of help each other along, so to speak. But I think that has been something that for me, especially on the brokerage side, it's so competitive and cutthroat, and I just genuinely don't like that about our industry. So the reality is, I don't really see anybody as competition. I feel like there's enough to go around, and we should be helping each other in a major way, especially in this climate. And I think that that's actually starting to happen, so it's encouraging.
I have to agree with that. There's a nice core group, right? Who I'm a firm believer in rising tides raise all boats. And like you said, like, we're not competition. And And at the end of the day, like, don't we just all want really cool places and to be a part of something cool? Like, isn't that what moves the needle for you? And so if you can bring others along with you, like, we're social creatures. Like, it's fun to have this family and just this group to know that, like, all right, we ride together.
Absolutely. What would you say? So the negatives of COVID are very easy to talk about and the impact on our business. What are some interesting things that you think, are not necessarily so bad?
So one thing I think it will weed out, right? Some the lazy folks that are some of those that are just trying to chuck space because they don't have the heart to continue and sort of hustle through this next period anyway, right? So you'll sort of clean up the low hanging fruit. But then, one of the things that I hope comes from this is sort of the reset of the mindset and how we approach it. And have you ever heard of James Howard Kunstler?
No.
Okay, so he's a new urbanist, and he's spoken at the Congress for New Urbanism. He's written a few books, but he has a TED Talk, and in his TED Talk he talks about building places that people care about, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm hoping sort of comes from all of this, as people are now recognizing that the U.S. is over-retailed, and we really, as people start to redevelop or build new or even look at their existing portfolios, there is going to be this competition of how do you've got to give people the reason to go there, right? It's not just the retailer doesn't just need to do their job to get people in the door. Like, you need to bring people to your centers as a landlord. So what I'm hoping sort of stems from this is that people actually really start caring about like what they do and realize that the physical environment plays such a key role in of someone's life and the way children are raised and the opportunities that are created for them. So I'm hoping we just have the world becomes a better place sort of because of all of it,
I love that. I mean, I really, that's very in line with, my way of thinking and a lot of things that I, go out and seek and then apply to, what we're doing at Sabre. And I have to check that out because that's fascinating. I agree. I mean, I think that ultimately also companies need to be more human. And I think the world is going to expect that, right? Like, whatever you're picking and choosing to associate with as a person, it has to align with who you are. And I think that, that's a lot of what we're seeing go on with companies. Like, if they are not authentic and they don't have a voice, they're also going to have a tough time in this environment and just moving forward. And I think, retailers can't necessarily just put goods and products on shelves and open their doors anymore. They have to figure out a way to basically seamlessly integrate online and their offline brick and mortar, which also needs to, have a little bit of some sort of, pizzazz in it that's exciting to go see, right? Otherwise, why would I go to a store when I could just order everything to be on my doorstep tomorrow, right? There's no need for me to actually go out unless there's an experience involved, and I want to go out and do that, right?
Right. And that's why I think, I guess this goes back again to your first question of something we're going to see that changes. When I first started in the industry, I remember feeling that it was like landlords on this side, tenants on this side, right? You weren't partners. And I think that mindset, COVID, like that, changed that mindset. You instantly became, all right, we have to work together. If we're getting through this, we're getting through it together. It's the only way we're all going to make it. And I'm hoping that that's something that continues. And I think if it does, as it should, you're going to see that in these partnerships between tenants and landlords as they work together to sort of invigorate, right, the public realm of all of these shopping areas, whether enclosed, outdoor, it doesn't matter. You're still, the sidewalk width does matter, right? So stop building this crappy building with a little sidewalk. Like, build it so people can go and they can hang out, and your tenants, in the event, God forbid, we end up in this situation again or something, they can roll out onto the sidewalk.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think also, starting back in March, for survival purposes, right? Like landlords and tenants have to partner and figure out creative ways that are fair, to work through this period of time. And look, it's no secret that a lot of tenants are unfortunately not able to make it right now, of all sizes and shapes and forms, whether they're local mom and pops or big chains, right? But some of that, like when you hear that like JC Penney is being like saved, I'm like, can they just go away already? Like, I'm by the way, this has nothing to do with COVID. I've been hearing this for how long now? It's like, really, like, do we need JC Penney to stay around? And I guess when you think about the co-tenancy, effect of JC Penney leaving, I totally understand the reasoning behind.
Right. Some people need JCPenney to stay around.
To stick around, but it's just a good example of, like you can't have that many retailers selling the same damn yellow sweater. It's right. Like, that's just been going on too long. And again, when folks that are not in our industry, which is all the time, I'm having conversations with friends and family that are like, but retail's dead. Like, how do you get up in the morning? It's like, no, this is all stuff that we've been very aware of, right, that we knew would happen over time. Did we think it'd happen overnight in one day in March? Not necessarily.
Yeah, we missed that memo.
Exactly, that we didn't know. But at the same time, we saw a lot of this, coming, and it's just, COVID's accelerating everything.
Absolutely.
That happened. The interesting part, and I'd love to get your take on this, is a lot of the categories that you mentioned that have been kind of propping up the industry are the fitness, the wellness, those kind of service oriented, whether it's, the decomposition of the salon, right? With like your dry bar, your, massage places, your wax centers, your
infusion lounges,
all of that stuff, right? So, obviously based on, and the restaurant hospitality industry, right? So based on what's going on right now, those are some of the businesses that are getting hurt the most, which is, I think, the biggest kind of challenge for us as a whole, is, we can't lose all of those fitness tenants. And I happen to represent a lot of them. It's a big part of my business. What are your thoughts on that? Because ultimately, you have, I started working with Orange Theory when they had 0 locations, right? My friends started the company, and, they've been one of the biggest success stories in franchise history. And their claim to fame is, we've never closed a studio, right? Like, nobody's coming out of COVID being able to say that, right? And it doesn't mean that you don't still have a strong business. It means that, this pandemic, nobody's safe from this. But what are your thoughts on, obviously the spaces that you're getting back? You would typically go to, I'm sure, fitness, wellness, restaurants, the most active categories. What should we look out for? What are you doing?
I mean, I think all of those concepts are at the end of the day are going to skyrocket, right? Once we're over this little hump. So once we get a vaccine and people start, going out more and going back to the fitness classes. Although I've seen progress when I go to my fitness classes, like every time I go, I definitely see more people there. But I think as people start to get more comfortable with it, I think there's going to be on the fitness side a focus from a consumer standpoint on health, right? Sure. So I think all of those concepts, if you can sort of walk with them through this tough time as a landlord, I think they're going to remember that, and they're going to, just, I think, skyrocket. Because let's be this, but how could there not, right, after a pandemic, be this focus on health? It just sort of makes sense. Yeah, and then for restaurants, I'm a firm believer, you have to eat every day, right? You don't have to go buy a t-shirt, but you have to eat. And I think that people will start as they get more comfortable with things. They'll start going back, which is why, again, if it was a successful concept before COVID, it is in your best interest, I would argue, as a landlord to work with the tenants then and to get through this tough period. Because if they had a successful concept before, together you can get them to the other side and they're going to be successful. There's going to be, what will we see on the restaurant side? Do I assume the way restaurants are laid out, are open kitchens maybe not going to be a thing anymore? Of course. Well, you sort of rethink maybe how some of the QSR folks have the line where the food's exposed and Joe can sneeze, possibly. I think there'll be changes there, but ultimately people are social creatures. And on the fitness side, one thing there's something about being in a room, sweating it out with 20 other people that motivates you. I don't care what anybody says about it. It's not the same when you're in your house. And, on the restaurant side, it's the same way. Like, people want to be around other people, even if you're not talking to them. And a restaurant offers that. It offers you sort of this liveliness, right?
Sure. Yeah, I agree completely. So, being students of consumer behavior, which we have to be, right? What are you doing when you say that when you're going to your fitness classes? What are you doing?
Surprisingly, hot yoga.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's not surprising. I know plenty of people who are, and I think that people who are in a certain lifestyle and are into fitness and wellness are also, they have a different perspective on their mortality, right? And I think that's also why everybody's more mortal today. Everybody realizes how important it is to be healthy and work out and all of that fun stuff. Are there any habits that you've kind of started as a result of the pandemic that you think you'll carry through with you? Are your coffee habits differently? Are you consuming coffee differently?
I am. So actually, that's probably one of my biggest changes
Yeah.
is the coffee side. So when everything shut down and we were under mandatory quarantine and Starbucks closed their locations except for locations with drive-throughs, I spent a couple of days going past my normal Starbucks down the road to a drive-through location. And then I was like, went to this Ace Hardware, bought a coffee maker because I didn't even own one. I had to have my husband teach me how to make coffee, okay? Because I had never made a cup of coffee in my life. And I haven't gone back to my daily habit of Starbucks. I hate to say that, but
No, but I'm bringing that up because I feel like that is something that is so telling about the impact of what's happening, right? Because if this would have come and gone in 3 months, you would have gone right back. Like, there's
right.
no doubt that you would have gone back. And the longer that we're forced to change our lifestyle and the patterns that we're in and our routines, the more we're actually going to stick to what we've decided to do to kind of, get through this period. It's no longer something that you're doing short term. You're actually sticking with it. It's funny. I asked because I'm staring at a Starbucks cup because I have represented Starbucks for going on 17 years. And, same thing happened with me where I was just, it took me months to even go to a Starbucks drive-through. I was just making coffee on my Keurig and just not caring and dealing with it. I had anxiety about it for probably the first 2 weeks because I was freaking out. Like I'm such a creature of habit and
Me too.
routine where I have to. I need my typical day pre-pandemic is drinking a cup of coffee to get into my car to go to F45 at 7 a.m. to crush a workout and then blah, 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 blah. Then I have to have my Americano and, get to the next phase of my day and so on and so forth. And that entire routine has changed. It went out the window, really. And everything that I do now is very different. I'm back to drinking Starbucks, but I'm not drinking it with the same frequency. And it's funny because instead of drinking the Americanos, the espresso, which is obviously stronger, I'm just drinking iced coffee. And I'm only typically having one a day, where I'm usually having at least 2 Starbucks a day, 2 trips to Starbucks a day with clients, with whatever.
Right.
So, I mean, it's it's interesting to see how those different changes are affecting the companies that, we are literally in the fabric of our lives, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I probably went to Starbucks almost every single day for the last 8 years.
Yeah.
And then overnight, I couldn't do that really anymore. And then it was inconvenient. And I was like, and you got to
Right.
go through the drive-through. Like, I don't know. And I don't know, with Starbucks, I think about like the third place. So it's like, I sort of fight that drive-through aspect with them only because I'm like, no, at your roots, you're this third place.
Totally.
Which
Totally.
a
And now,
drive-through will never offer you.
that's right. And now everything's going to drive through anyway. So,
I know, I know. Actually, speaking of that, I saw this weekend my first Chipotle with the drive-through.
so I brought Chipotle to New York in like 2004. And we actually, the first Chipotle location that we did was a former Krispy Kreme with a drive-through. And Steve Ells, the founder of Chipotle, and all of us were standing outside of this Krispy Kreme, a 3,500 square foot freestanding Krispy Kreme with a drive-through. And it was in Long Island, New York. And a drive-through on Long Island is like one of the toughest places to get a drive-through approved. And we're standing there and we're talking about like, how cool would it be to use this drive-through? And it was so funny that like everybody at Chipotle was like, we would never have a drive-through. Why would we, So it's just funny as time goes on and you encounter things like pandemics, you learn never to say never.
Right,
Ever.
right.
Because Chipotle, at their core, back then, would never have a drive-through. And it's a different world. It's a different time. And I would go through a drive-through at Chipotle. By the way, I was trying to convince them to keep the drive-through and actually do a drive-through Chipotle then, which probably would have made a lot of sense. But you know what it was? From them, it was an operations nightmare.
That's what I had always heard. Yeah.
They didn't even want to start to think about how to tackle that.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be a lot of concepts that go that route. It makes me think, though, for inline restaurants, and obviously this kind of only lends itself for certain, I would say, probably types of restaurants, but I'm wondering how many of those like walk-up takeout windows we're going to start to see. Like, why not incorporate that into your storefront?
We're incorporating it into all of our Starbucks.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it makes sense. And kind of adds a little cool factor. It breaks up the facade a little bit. Like, it adds another element. So I think it looks good anyway. But now, I'm like, why not? I did have a tenant ask if I would be open to it. And I was like, all day, do it.
Totally. I think it's great. I agree with that. So one couple things. Well, first and foremost, I think it's important that we mention that you and I don't know each other very well, but based on the fact that we're interacting on social media, we probably feel like we know each other better than we do. Fair
Absolutely.
statement,
Fair
right?
statement.
And I think that is, again, like that relationship building process that you could do with very little effort, right? Just supporting people and commenting and tagging and doing those little actions, those little touch points goes such a long way. And to your point earlier about talking to tenants that you don't necessarily have a spot for right now, but that you're interested in and you're a fan of, and they see that you're actually like part of their again, the fabric of what they do and who they are, I think that will go a long way in this climate and forever with what we do. And, I think that, people who don't really truly understand these platforms should probably give it a shot. The nice part is you're seeing a lot more people that you wouldn't typically see on social media jumping in. And I hope that that continues.
Agreed. Agreed. I mean, I don't think you have a choice at this point. I think you sort of need to force yourself to get comfortable with it and at least get to where you can use it on a basic level, or you're going to be left behind. As much as I hate to say that, I mean, these are good people, but the world is changing. Things were already changing. And like you said, I mean, all this did was just accelerate it. And so let's get on it. And to your point, I have to say, I was thinking about this the other day. I feel over COVID, and since I really started to put more of a focus on using social media for commercial real estate and building relationships. I have to say, I feel like my network absolutely has grown on such an authentic level, more so than the 20-30 minute meeting at ICSC, where people are just trying to fill up their schedule so they look good, oh, well, I had 25 meetings,
Yeah.
They're actually authentic relationships to where you really are, whether it's with other landlord reps or brokers. I mean, it's just, everybody really is there to sort of, let's navigate this together, let's help each other out, and let's sort of lead into this new era.
It's really like the most enjoyable and exciting part of what I do day in and day out now, like hands down. I think we all talk about how we prefer to do business with people we like and want to do business with. And when you could actually like get to know somebody a little bit more, that rather than just, those short, very professional interactions where, I feel like everybody's like almost, you're meeting a representative of the person,
Right.
as opposed to actually truly getting to know somebody. Before we jump, tips for younger people getting into our industry, anything that you would have loved to have heard from somebody that has a little bit more experience when you were just kind of getting into the business?
I would tell them that this is a great time, I think, to be entering, because the opportunity for growth in the future is huge, right? And we're also sort of embarking, as the industry is really, it's going through a full change. It had started, but now we're really there. I think you actually have an opportunity to be a part of that change and to sort of write that story, which is cool. And I would remind all of them, like, days are going to be hard. There are going to be days where you absolutely look yourself in the mirror and wonder what the hell you are doing. Like, is this the right thing for me?
Oh, for sure.
Can I handle this? You can. There'll be crappy days, but the reward and the relationships that you're going to build from all of this will be lasting, and the impact that you have the opportunity to make on your own communities is super cool. So just keep hustling and just keep trying things.
I love that. That's great. Where can everybody find you on social media?
I am at City Love Cam on Instagram. And then if you just, obviously on LinkedIn, it's under Charlotte Manley.
There you go. Charlotte, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Fun. Yeah, this was awesome. I appreciate it.
Good stuff. Keep up the great work.
All right. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
'Cause this is digital discussions.